The car tells you what it wants you to do, how it wants you to treat it, if you're willing to listen. All right, guys, if you know how to drive a manual transmission, you may have heard of the term double clutching. And maybe you know what it is, maybe you don't, but there's a lot of misinformation as to what it is and whether or not it is appropriate and relevant to learn today in 2025. So first, what you need to understand is what double clutching is. When I'm going to downshift like this and I rev match, I blip the throttle as I clutch it, right? So rather, let me actually take that back. Let's just do an upshift. So I'm in third right now. I'm going to shift to fourth, clutch in, clutch out, simple. The revs naturally fall, and once I've clutched out and I'm in the next gear, which is fourth, I can get back on the throttle. But right there, I went from fourth to third. And the little difference is that because you're going down a gear, you need to get your revs higher up. So that's why I blip the throttle as I have my clutch in to get the revs to match what the next gear wants it to be. So again, third, clutch in and out. There's no need for me to blip the throttle. When I go from fourth to third, I gotta blip it to be smooth. Now, a lot of people don't even do a rev match, and that's actually a bad habit. It's gonna increase wear on your clutch. It's gonna upset the balance of the car if you're driving hard. And essentially, you want to always be rev matching when you're driving. It's simply a good habit. Some people think it's try hard or like you're trying to be a race car driver. No, you're just trying to drive smoothly and properly. And those who feel challenged by it simply just don't know how to do it themselves. Now, right there, that was a heel-toe downshift, and it's the same thing as a regular downshift rev match. The only difference is that my foot is on the brake while I'm doing so because I want to slow the car down while I'm also downshifting. So heel-toe downshifting is not that complicated. It's just a rev match while you're pressing the brakes. That's all it is. Now, because we have Synchros, these synchronizers in the gearbox, they spin up the input shaft, one of the components in the transmission, to the correct speed when you downshift. That is why double clutching today is not necessary, but I still recommend it. Because while the Synchros are doing the work to match that input shaft speed, you can also do it yourself manually. And there are many benefits to doing so. First of all, most of the time you don't have to do it. But when you do decide that you do want to do it, you'll also save some wear and tear on your Synchros, which doesn't seem like a big deal. But what you have to remember is that even Synchros don't have an unlimited lifespan. They have a limited lifetime during which they can actually do their job. I was driving my buddy Fenton from the Zygoing channel. Awesome channel, go check him out. He has an NA1 NSX, and I was reviewing it against a Lotus Emira. And he was saying, hey man, my Synchros are failing, so please just shift slow to avoid issues while shifting. Now the reason being, if you shift slower and the Synchros are failing, you'll be able to avoid some of the issues of grinding your gears and such. But you're still gonna have a very slow and clunky experience while you're shifting. And I'm trying to, when I'm reviewing cars, I'm trying to shift fast. I'm trying to push the car to 7/10, get a feel for it. And I told him, well, you know what? I'm just gonna double clutch instead, and that way I won't have to worry about shifting it slow. Because while the Synchros are failing and not being able to get that input shaft up to speed, by double clutching, I am manually getting the input shaft into the right speed such that the Synchros don't have to do any work. So even though they are failing, no issue. I can still shift at full speed. And you can see that video, I am shifting at full speed, double clutching, no problem. Now, how do you actually double clutch? Now, normally when we're shifting either an upshift or a downshift, we clutch in once and go from one gear to the next, quickly passing by neutral. When you double clutch, you clutch out in neutral, then clutch back in, and then go into the next gear. And the rev match part, when you're actually blipping the throttle, does not occur while you are moving the gear shift, the gear selector, into the next gear and your clutch is depressed, but rather when you are in neutral. So your clutch has to be depressed, and you have to be in neutral when you blip. Oh, squirrel, buddy. So the hard thing here is it's hard to show it in slow motion, because if you do it slowly, then your revs will drop. But let me just show you. So let's say I'm in fourth. If I were to do it in slow-mo, I'd go fourth, third, clutch out, blip, clutch in, third. That would be a double clutch slowed down, but of course, since my revs are actually dropping, that's not really a proper double clutch. That is a double clutch heel toe, which I realized I should show you a regular double clutch without heel toe first. But just based on the road right now. Alright, so I'm on third, want to get down to second. Just like that. So I clutch in, go into neutral, blip the throttle, and clutch in again as I get into second. It happens fast, and you have to do it fast, otherwise you don't actually get the desired effect. But when you do it properly, the gear will just slot right into place with, it's almost like it wants to go there. It's a beautiful thing. It's buttery smooth. Normally you feel a little bit of resistance as you get into the next gear. But with a properly executed double clutch, it feels like butter. Now, there are a few other points where you do need to double clutch, even in modern cars. And that big thing is actually shifting down into first. A little heel toe double clutch into second. But anytime you shift into first, because there's a large gear ratio change and a lot of jerkiness that can happen, it always makes me cringe a little bit when I see drivers just, you know, ham-fisting it into first and relying on the Synchros to do the job for them, because it's lacking mechanical sympathy to do so. Jason Camisa on the Carmudgeon show was talking with Derek Tam-Scott, and they were both saying how it is a crime against manual transmissions to not double clutch into first during spirited driving. Now, if you're at a stop sign and you don't double clutch into first, that's not an issue. But if you're driving at speed and trying to shift into first without double clutching, that is a very aggressive move that I would not want someone doing on any of my cars. They would need to know how to double clutch. And I hear the counterpoints being that, hey, this is not necessary, this is something that only, you know, truckers need to do with because in their vehicles they don't actually have Synchros, because they want them to be more robust, the transmissions. And also older cars don't have Synchros either. But again, you're gonna find these edge cases shifting into first, and if a car's Synchros are failing, especially on an older car like this NA1 NSX I was driving, that only had maybe 120,000 miles. Those are times when you need it. But beyond that, I think there's something to trying to drive and improve your skill just for the sake of trying to drive better and improve your skill. So, way back in the day when I was in med school, I knew I wanted to do surgery. And for those who don't know, I ended up going into plastic surgery, but back in med school, all I knew was that in order to get into any of these surgical fields, because I was considering plastics versus orthopedic surgery versus neurosurgery, I knew that I needed to have some fundamental skills. And one of those fundamental skills that as a medical student you should start doing early if you want to stand out is suturing and knot time. So I would practice obsessively, and you guys can actually watch some videos on my Med School Insiders channel and Kevin Jabal MD channel where I actually show you how to suture most effectively and knot tie most effectively. And I went pretty hard at this, more so than the average medical student who wanted to go into surgery. And you can argue the extrinsic benefits, the things like, okay, I got better evaluations, people were impressed by my skills in the operating room, etc., etc. Actually, Dr. Gordon Lee, the program director in plastic surgery at Stanford when I did an away rotation there, told me I was operating at a PGY2 or PGY3 level. Awesome, that's gonna help with my letters of eval and all that stuff. Okay, cool, whatever. That's actually not the most important thing. The most important thing is that I myself got to feel the satisfaction of trying to pursue mastery. I still had a lot to learn as a med student, obviously, but I was operating multiple years ahead of myself, which was awesome. And I was seeing the results, and as I was first starting, I would get frustrated because, hey, these other people do it, it looks so easy, why can't I do this shit? And you keep practicing, keep applying yourself, and it gets easier and easier. And then what used to be hard a month ago is now second nature, and now you're trying to take the next step. And as an example, you need to learn how to do both one-handed knot ties and two-handed knot ties, depending on where you're operating in the body. If it's deep and you don't have much space, you need to do a one-handed knot. Otherwise, two-handed knots are easier, and there's pros and cons to both. So you would learn how to do that, and if you're right-handed like I am, you would do that with your right hand. But in the operating room, there would be instances where you're not necessarily able to use the hand you want to use. Let's say you're standing to the left of the attending surgeon and you're the med student, he's asked you to knot tie, and if you're like, oh, sorry, I gotta switch, I gotta move all the way around you right-handed, that's not gonna fly. You have a sterile field, you can't just move around in the operating room like that. So either you know how to use your left hand or you don't. Now, granted, this does not happen often. Just like a synchro failing on a car, it does not happen often. But shouldn't you know how to do that if you want to be the best driver? Shouldn't you know how to tie left-handed if you want to be the best surgeon? Of course. So I would then practice using my left hand for one-handed knots. I got the two-handed knots with my right hand dominant and also one-handed knots with my right hand dominant, but I need to know how to do that with my left hand if I want to be the best possible surgeon. And the same thing applies here. If you want to be the best possible driver, and if you're watching this channel, you are a driving enthusiast more than a car enthusiast. You don't go to the meets and flex on the noobs and the plebs based on you driving some fancy expensive car. What you care about is the feeling of driving, the connectedness with the machine, trying to become a better driver, getting more out of the car, enjoying the experience behind the wheel. And for that, I would say yes, you should learn how to double clutch just for the sake of knowing how to double clutch. Not to impress people, not to get some extrinsic accolades and whatever. Who gives a shit? No one's gonna congratulate you on knowing how to double clutch. Just for your own knowledge, when you're driving a buddy's car whose synchros are failing, or when you want to shift down into first in spirited driving, that's why you do it. And when it becomes second nature, it's not one of those things you have to think really carefully about, like, oh, am I ready yet? Like, you can just choose when or not to do it in a split instance. I can just be like, yeah, I'm gonna double clutch that, boom. Or I'll be like, no, you know what? I'm just gonna do a single rev match. Not a big deal. Part of the fun and part of the game of driving stick, especially when you're driving on slower roads, or if you're stuck behind someone that's going slower and you can't push the car, I think part of the fun and enjoyment is just trying to find that last 2% in shifting smoothness and shifting efficiency and shifting precision. Listening to the car, seeing how quickly the revs drop, how smoothly you can shift it. The car tells you what it wants you to do, how it wants you to treat it, if you're willing to listen. And in those instances, even when you're driving slow, you can find the fun to say, hey, you know what? Let me try. There we go. I can double clutch that downshift in a second. Awesome. Fun. Good times. So one way to understand it is trying to force the car into a certain gear when the synchros are failing, or if the car doesn't even have synchros. Bro, why are you crossing the double yellows? Oh boy. Alright, so one way to... dude, I really don't understand drivers like that. One way to understand it is trying to force the car into a gear without synchros that are operating properly, or even with synchros that are working properly but into first gear. It's like trying to force a joint into its end range of motion quickly, immediately, forcefully, without any warm-up. It's like not something you want to do. So now that you understand what double clutching is, why it's important, why it's still relevant even today, in order to do it, you first want to be comfortable just doing a regular rev match downshift. And once you can do that, just practice doing that motion where you go into neutral, clutch out, rev, and go into the next gear by clutching it again. So the reason it's called double clutch is that you hit the clutch twice. Once to get into neutral, and then once to get into the next gear. And in between your two clutch pulses, you blip the throttle. And start really slow like I just did back there. It's not actually a proper double clutch because everything is out of whack in terms of speeds, but I'm gonna go from fourth, I'm gonna go into neutral, blip, and into third. And once you get that motion, there's a little bit of a learning curve that you have to like think about it, right? Once it starts feeling natural, you start increasing the pace of that motion. And as you increase the pace of that motion, you'll eventually get to the proper speed, where you go in and out. And the way you know that you did it properly is that, again, the gear shift will slot right into gear seamlessly, effortlessly, like butter. Much smoother than a regular rev match downshift. That's a regular rev match downshift. There's a little bit of friction as I'm going from neutral and entering the third gear gate, but with a double clutch, it just slots right in, and I don't have that same level of resistance. There you go, my friends. Double clutching in a nutshell. If you have any questions, need some help, leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to answer. Much love, and I'll see you all in the next one.